Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to day 6 of Composite Figures Part 2. All right, and so we are going to continue looking at composite figures, and this time we are finding the area of composite figures. Now, again, I've used the word composite figures multiple times just to remind you, composite figures are just figures that are composed or made up of other shapes. Okay, and so if the easiest one to think about is maybe a house looking shape. All right, so if you have this house looking shape, it is made up of a triangle at the top and then a square or a rectangle at the bottom. All right, so that's a composite figure. What I'm going to start by doing is just walk you step by step, okay, how you can determine the area of a composite figure. Now, again, if you ever get stuck or you're like, hey, I don't know where to, make sure you use these steps. All right, they're very clear and they are laid out, and I'm going to model and show you how to go through each of them with a couple examples. But if you find yourself saying, I don't know how to do this, please make sure that you review these steps. All right, so step number 1 is to divide the figure into smaller shapes. Okay, and so if I have something that looks like this house, right, shape, I am going to divide it into 2 shapes that I do know the area for. So I'm going to divide it into a triangle and then a square or a rectangle at the bottom. That's step 1. Step 2 is I am going to write down the formulas for the area of each shape. Okay, and so you are going to be given a formula sheet that will have all of the formulas. On the test, you will have access to all of the formulas. So you don't need to memorize them. You don't need to, you should always be looking for them. And in the previous lesson, I gave you notes where you have all of the formulas there. There's a couple that were left off, but you will have access to all of the formulas. All right, so when you are writing them down, go look to the formula sheet or wherever you have them and just copy down the formulas. Step 3 is to label all of the parts of the measurements that you need to calculate the formula. So guys, this step right here is the hardest part of this whole process, because what's going to happen is you're going to need to figure out what are the dimensions of the shapes that you now have. And a lot of times, because you're going to be cutting it, now something might be missing, or you're going to need to use the other information that you have to figure out what that part of the new shape is. Okay, and so I'm going to show you that, but again, that step is probably the hardest of the 5 steps. All right, step number 4, once you have that, you're just going to plug in the measurements. Okay, so you're just going to plug in the measurements for each. And so if you have, you know, the formula for a triangle, which is base times height, you're going to plug in the base, you're going to plug in the height. If you have an area for a rectangle, you have length times width, you're going to plug in the length, you're going to plug in the width. That's all that is. And then step 5, once you have figured out all of the areas for each shape, then you're going to add them all together. Okay, so you're going to add the areas together to find the area of the whole composite figure. All right, so these are the steps. Again, remember, if you find yourself, especially when you are practicing these at the end of the lesson, please make sure that you go back. Guys, again, look at all of the steps. Make sure you go step by step. If you find yourself stuck, review back to these steps. Okay, so we'll start with this one. All right, and so when we look at this, we have this C-looking shape. There is no formula for just this type of a shape, so what we got to do is we got to divide it up. Okay, now here's the deal. There are different ways that you could divide this up. I could divide it here and end up with 3 sort of rectangles, or the way I would do it is I would divide it this way. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. If you could divide it different ways, and regardless of how you divide it, you're going to end up with the same answer as long as you do it correctly. Okay, so you can do it different ways. This is the way I'm going to divide it. So that's step 1. I'm dividing my shape. Now, when I divide my shape, what shapes do I have? Well, I end up with just 3 different rectangles. Okay, I got a rectangle here and then 2 smaller ones there. All right, so Step 2 is I'm going to write down the formulas for each shape. Well, they're all rectangles, and the area, again, I'm going to go back to my formula sheet, okay, or wherever I have my formulas available to me, and area of a rectangle is length times width. Area of this rectangle will also be length times width. And then the area of this rectangle is length times width. So again, I'm writing the formula for each shape, okay? Because that's what I'm gonna need to do in order to find it, and then of the whole figure, okay? So now, that's step 2. Now, step 3, again, this is the part where I said can be the most difficult. Now, I gotta make sure I have the sides for each of my shapes, okay? So let's start by looking at this bigger rectangle, okay? Do I have the dimensions or the measurements for both sides? Well, I have this side is 9, and then, but I don't have this side, okay? Well, up here it says this is 6, but here's what you gotta remember. This 6 is the whole side, but because I just cut it, I just divided it, this whole thing is 6, but I only need this piece. So what I have to do, and this is the key, you got to look at what other information you have and figure out what is just this piece. So I got to look at what I have. Okay, well, what's across? All right, I don't have any. What I want to do is I want to look, oh, well, I have this piece is 2, so that means this piece is also 2 centimeters. Well, hold on, if this is, the whole thing is 6, and I have this piece is 2, that means what's left over is 4. And so that piece right there is 4 centimeters. Well, if that's 4 centimeters, this is also 4 centimeters. So now I have my dimensions for my large rectangle. It is 9 and 4. Now let's make sure we have everything for the other smaller rectangles. Well, it tells me the length and the width is 2 and 3. Okay, so I have what I need there. Do I have my length and my width for this rectangle? Well, hopefully you can see these are the same, and that's also 2 centimeters, and these smaller rectangles are exactly the same, all right? So now I have all of my measurements. Once I have all of my measurements, now I go to step 4, which is to just plug in the measurements into the formula. So for this big rectangle, I'm going to do length times width. Well, my length is 4 centimeters, and my width is 9 centimeters. So 9 times 4, and that's going to give me 36 centimeters squared. Okay, and so I have 36 is the area of this rectangle. So this is 36 centimeters squared. Now I do the length times width for my rectangle. Well, length is 2 centimeters times 3 centimeters. 2 centimeters times 3 centimeters is 6 centimeters squared. Okay, so that is the area for this small rectangle. Okay, well, again, we said these were the same, but just for the sake of completing the problem, I'll do it again. 2 centimeters times 3 centimeters. Okay, 2 times 3, that's 6 centimeters squared. That is the area for the smaller ones. And so now I have found the area of each piece. In step 5, final step, is to add all of those together. So I'm going to do 36 centimeters squared plus 6 centimeters squared plus another 6, and that is going to give me 48 centimeters squared, and that is the area of the entire composite figure. So now what I want you to do is I want you to pause it, and I want you to complete the area for this figure. Okay, again, follow the steps. I just walked through all of them. You are going to do this one on your own, and I'm actually not going to give you the answer because you're going to have to enter the answer in a Desmos activity here at the end. Okay, so divide this up. Okay, what I'll tell you is the one thing I will tell you is there's two ways you can divide it up, but however you divide it, you're going to end up with the same answer. Give me just a moment. These are the two ways you probably want to cut it. You can either cut it this way, or you can cut it this way. You don't need to cut it both ways, okay? So either this way or that way. And again, you do not need to, and you should not cut them both ways, okay? Because then you're going to end up with more shapes than you need, and you're going to just create more work for yourself, all right? So cut it this way or this way, and then solve it, and then that will, yeah. And if you have any questions, raise your hand, ask questions, comment, and we're moving on. So in that last question, we had all rectangles. Now I want to do one that has some other shapes, okay? So this time we have this house. I've referenced the house figure a lot. You have sort of, this should be obvious. This one's even kind of cut for us. We have, when we do step one, we're going to cut it there, right? So that we now have a triangle and a rectangle. I know this looks like a square. I know it's not a square because this is 8 and this is 6. The sides aren't equal, okay? So first step is cut it. I got a square and a rectangle, okay? Now, step number 2 is I am going to write down the formulas for each of these. So I'm going to go to my formula sheet. The first shape I have is a triangle. It is area equals 1/2 times the base times the height. Okay, so that's the formula for a triangle. Then I got a rectangle. The rectangle is the area is length times width. Okay, so I got both of my shapes. Now I'm ready to move on to the next step, which is to label and make sure I have everything I need. All right, so for a triangle, the formula is base times height. Well, I have this labeled, which is the height, right? Because it's straight up and down. The base is this bottom, and right now that's not labeled, but I can figure it out based on the information I'm given, right? So again, this 8 yards is across from that, so the base is also going to be 8 yards, right? So now I have my base. I also have my height, so I'm good there. Now let's look at my rectangle. Let's make sure I have my measurements for my rectangle. Length and width is 8 and 6, so I have everything there. There's nothing else to figure out. So now I just plug them in. For the for the triangle, it's 1/2 times the base, which is 8 yards, times the height, which is 3 yards. And then when I multiply those, 1/2 times 8 times 3, that is going to give me 12 yards squared, okay? And so that is the area for the triangle, okay? Now, let's do the rectangle. We got length times width, so we got 8 yards times 6 yards. Multiply those, 8 times 6, that is going to give me 48 yards squared. And so the 48 is the area for the rectangle. Okay. And so now to find the area of the whole figure, I'm going to add 12 plus 48, and that will give me 60 yards squared is the area of the whole entire figure. All right. So I've done one with rectangle and a square. I'm sorry, not a rectangle, a rectangle and a triangle. And now guess what you're going to do? You're going to do two. Hey, listen, if you're doing this in an order, I would do this one first, then do that one. This one's a little easier, but they're both similar. They're exactly the same. So I want you to do this one. I want you to do this one. Again, please use your steps. Use this example to help you. I'm not going to give you the answers. You're going to input your answer, or you can ask, have somebody who is watching you or helping you watch these figure out what the answer is. Okay, so you can verify your answer there. But I want you to do these two examples and then plug in your answers. All right. And then lastly, there's one more type of problem that we're going to do. and this time it is involving circles. Okay, so we're going to do 2 involving circles. Okay, so this one though is a little different. Instead of having this composite figure where you have multiple shapes, this time you have a shape within a shape. Okay, and we are looking for the area of the shaded part. Okay, so some of this is not shaded. We're looking to find the area of what is shaded. To do this, what we're going to end up doing is finding the area of the outside and then taking away the area of what's the shape that's inside, okay, because that part is not shaded. So let's start by finding, okay, what shapes do I have? Well, I have the area of a rectangle, so I'm going to end up doing length times width. And then I have the area of a circle. Now, this is the first time we've done the area of a circle in this lesson. So, you know, again, same thing, go to your formula sheet, figure out what that formula is. The area of a circle is pi r squared, r being the radius. Okay, so let's make sure we have the dimensions we need. Okay, and this one I have already kind of pre-given you the radius here. And it's 5.25. So now we have everything we need. We have my length, my width, we have our radius. Now we're good to go. All right, so to find the area of the entire rectangle, I'm going to do length times width, which is 21 centimeters times 10.5 centimeters. And when I multiply that, 21 times 10.5, that is going to give me 220.5, and that's centimeters squared. Okay, so that is the area of the whole thing. Now I'm going to find the area of the circle. Okay, pi is, you're just going to use 3.14 times the radius, which is 5.25, and we're going to square that. Okay, so 5.25 squared times 3.14, that gives me 86.5625, but I'm just going to round it to 86.55. Okay, so guys, this is in the area of the whole thing is 220, and then the area of each piece of the circle is 86.55. 86. Now, because I have two of them, 86.55, those are both of those. So now, to find the area of just the shaded part, I'm going to take the area of the whole thing and then subtract the two circles. So I'm going to do 220.5 minus 86.55. And then I got to do the other circle, 86.55. And that is going to give me the area of just the shaded part. Okay, so the area of the shaded part, 220.5 minus 86.55 minus 86.55, that gives me 47.4. So running out of room here, 47. So 47, let me just write it again up here. 47.4, and it is centimeters squared, is the area of the shaded part. Okay. So I have two more examples for you to do like that. This next one is the one I want you to do first. Okay, so I want you to do this one. All right. So I want you to do that one, and then if you're feeling really good, I want you to go back and do this one. Okay. And you know, this one's a little harder, so this one is a challenge question. But I do want you to go back and do that. All right. And so, hey friends, I know there's a lot of steps, but hopefully you're seeing, you know, the formula sheet kind of gives you the formulas. All you got to do is kind of know what shapes you're dealing with, add those formulas, and then, you know, just add that stuff together. So hopefully this is helping you. Guys, you're going to need more practice with that, and that's okay. So practice with the problems that are remaining, and let me know if you have any questions, comment, like it. Y'all are great. Continue. Go be great.